Man, we're going to say what's going on, How you all doing today? Man, we excited about being here today. This is another Manhood Moments podcast. Brothers, what's going on out there? How you doing, man? Join us.
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Still recovering from the nice little conversations last week, marinating on that and ready to start today.
That's what I'm talking about.
Doing pretty good, man. Still plugging away at a lot of different things, man. So
okay. Cool, man. So so we always touch bases and just see what's been going on with one another since the last time, man. I can tell you now that what people see the background and all they see is just a wall, because that's literally what we living in right now. It's just rooms with walls, because we're in the middle of transitioning and got everything packed up, ready to make this move from over in the Illinois side over back up to the Northeast area of Missouri. And so we're excited about it, but at the same time, ready to just kind of get settled. This whole moving thing, this is like for young people, man. This ain't for us. I think I'm gonna have to either adopt some kids or something like that or whatever.
Well, listen, you got the right idea, right? You didn't try to move yourself. And that's what I've learned. When my brother introduced that to me back in 2012 or 13,
okay,
I paid for movers every single time, because nothing is like nothing is like trying to get your stuff together and then having to move it yourself.
Oh,
I agree.
So I'll never ever pay by meal again for family members to move my stuff. I gotta be involved.
Because that's when your stuff get nicked up.
It be broke up.
I mean, you
too heavy.
You didn't pay me nothing. I mean, what you expect?
And then you can't feed them too soon, man. Because if you feed them too soon, it's gonna be
it's done.
Right. It's not getting set up. Washing machine not in the right room. No, I need everything where it's supposed to go before we go eat.
Talking
Those
about
breaks got to be real short too.
I know.
Get some water, some Gatorade, a snack, and come on back.
That's it. We gotta eat that. You gotta have finger food so you can eat it while you walking.
Right.
So what's been going on, T Bird? Talk to us, man. How things going with the business? I know you started. You and your partner Chauncey, you all started. Bird hunters. So talk to us. How is that coming along, man?
Well, first off, I just hit 47 years last week. So I had a birthday, which y'all gave me.
My guy.
Thank you. So that's a good thing.
It was Mother's Day, wasn't it?
It was the day before.
The day before,
last Saturday.
All right.
And next year is going to be on Mother's Day.
So how you gonna navigate that, man? You're gonna say this is my day today. We could do Mother's Day Monday.
Maybe I'll take Saturday again.
All right.
And this time, man, I'm gonna give my mom the flowers. When I was younger, it happens every now and then, and my mom would defer to me. So this time, I'll make sure I take care of the ladies of the family, my wife, my mom, and I'll take that Saturday or Monday.
That's it.
It'll be their day, Mama's do enough. But with the bird hunter stuff, man, we're just really trying to plot and get everything lined up. Mm-hmm. And just making sure we have the specific package. And then, man, you know me, I'm always reading some stuff, and it's all about trying to maybe get an assessment to see where somebody is with their tactics and everything, or what you're looking for. Because some people looking for the right gun, some people want something more fancy. Some people may want some home defense stuff. Some people may want to know, okay, if I'm walking across campus, what should I look for? Or if I'm going shopping, what should I look for? So it's trying to find out exactly what they need and fit their needs. Because I would say with situational awareness, defensive tactics and all that, I can teach all kinds of stuff, but then I want to just narrow it down. Okay, what are you necessarily looking for? Because some people are okay, what's the best punch? What's the best technique? One is your mind, then it's distance. But then it depends on, for example, where you are. If you're so far away, a kick is easier to do. Or if you're close up, it's an uppercut. So I can't say, okay, all you do is a jab punch. It's all about distance, where you are, and what to grab, how big the person is. So it's really just kind of breaking it down, but understanding the mental aspect of it too.
You all have any training set up or prepare for the near future?
We will. I would say, man, things seem like it's starting to open up as far as no mask, you vaccinated and everything. So we'll have some things lined up. I have a couple of places that I can go and hold some seminars, workshops. I can always use my jiu-jitsu gym if people want to be more hands-on. No specific dates just yet, but it is coming.
Good deal. Keep pushing, man. I think that's an awesome adventure, and just the need for it, not just for women, but for men also. And I taught defensive tactics also when I was with the agency. It was one of their primary trainers. And I know that understanding that distance, paying attention to your environments, and it's not being paranoid, that's being aware of where you are, man. And awareness would do more for you than anything. So, man, keep pushing. You and Brother Chauncey, man, that's a good brother. T. Patrick, what's going on, brother? What's going on in the world? I know you're traveling places and seeing things. You in the States right now? Because where you might show up.
Well, let's just say I'm in an undisclosed location.
All right.
Live. No. I am at home. I am in St. Louis. But this has been the COVID messed up last year. Last year was my travel year, right? I was supposed to go everywhere, and then all of a sudden, boom. You know what I mean? So I'm getting a little bit in. I'm planning some stuff. I'm fully vaccinated, so now that we don't necessarily have to wear a mask, I'm still a little skeptical about that. But I don't know when to wear a mask, when not to. But no, I'm trying to get out. But really, what's only thing that's been going on is working this job, man. We're expanding, so I've got a lot of analysis and different things to do for our emerging markets and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm had some pretty good. Got to test out some of the standard work things that we've been building over the last few months. This week, So I mean, busy with that, and then trying to take it easy, man. Enjoying the kids, enjoying myself. Still on this weight loss journey, man.
I know, man.
I see you, man. You looking good.
You about to waste away, man. You make me feel bad every time I grab that little Debbie. Yeah. I'll be like, man, look, man.
No, well, let me tell you, I was never, ever in my life as heavy as I was last year. And so right now,
a lot of people though.
Yeah, and it was just, I just didn't have the time. But now that I have the time, the plan was January hits, new job. I get to focus on the health, and like I said, I still eat what I want. Like, I have not changed my diet. Now, I do. I have been using.
Well, that's important.
I have been using like meal replacement shakes and stuff like that, but sugar content's so high, so I've kind of backed off on that a little bit. Now it's just just really making sure that I have a good calorie deficit. That's where the weight loss comes in at. So if I'm active, I'll have a bigger meal. If I'm not so active, I'm gonna eat a salad, and it's just making sure that, I'm just thankful that I can have, 2,300 calories a day. I'm good with that. You know what I mean? So, or 2,800 when I'm not working out.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of that calculation, knowing where my calories are and stuff like that. So I want people to think that I'm just, I'm sickly. I'm not. You know what I mean? I am shedding the pounds, but you know what I mean. It is in a healthy way. It's just making sure.
You're doing it incrementally. That's the key.
So what I've done.
That's the key.
I've done 10 pounds at a time. So my next 10 pounds is to get down to 223, and then go to 213 and until I get below 200, and I'll slow down for real for a while, and then decide whether or not I'm gonna try to hit 170, which is what I'm supposed to be at. My height.
That's
I'm
it,
not
man.
I'm not totally committed on that yet, though. I think
that's it, man. They're being settled. It's important, man.
Yeah, my clothes are getting too big now, man.
Well, you could afford to go buy a new wardrobe.
You're the boss. You're the big boss.
You know, man, that's critical. Stability is very critical, man. And so today we're going to have a really hard, but a really necessary conversation. Talking about mental health, man. And I think this is something we've been talking about. But with this being National Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it was good to come back to it and just have a really interesting conversation about this, man, and just really be kind of open and transparent. I know for me, I've had some really difficult periods in my life and some really challenging periods in my life when things were not stable. And because they were not stable, I experienced some really difficult depressive moments, mood issues, all those things. And as I began to go through counseling and things of that nature, I started looking back, man, and it started even when I was a young man, and we didn't even know that those things was going on. So we want to invite brothers who are listening in today. We're actually set up to where if you want to join us live today, we want to invite you to go ahead and let us know. Shoot us a real quick inbox, and we will send you a link to join us today. You join us online, and we'll actually send you the Zoom link where you can be on screen, and we can have this conversation. You can share your thoughts and feelings about when we look at this issue of depression, we look at this issue of mental health and things like that, because it's real, man. This is real. It's hereditary. It's even greater nowadays because of the stress that we're dealing with as men, because of the social issues that are just seems like it's metastasizing and getting worse and worse. Family issues. If you're a father, if you're a husband, the responsibility that comes along with that. Religion, because religion has a way of creating these feelings of guilt and shame, things like that. Historical issues, all these things, man, play a part, and they put us in periods where we are dealing with these mental health problems, man. And so traumatic episodes in our lives. One of the most traumatic episodes in my life was going through the first divorce that I went through. And man, and that was so traumatic. Because growing up, for me, all I dreamed about was having this family, right? Was having this family with my kids and a wife and things like that. But didn't realize that some other things, you have to do some other things and prepare some other things in order to be able to build that kind of home, that kind of life, right? You have to have some knowledge, and that's not this episode. But I know going through that divorce was very traumatic. It was, and the years that followed, man, because I had already been through some trauma as a young man growing up in a home, but then going through that divorce. And I remember, man, standing there in front of the judge, because when you're going through divorce, you got to appear in court. Well, back then you had to appear in court, and you had to stand there and go on record. And she didn't show up for her own personal reason, but this is not about her. But I remember standing there, right? And the judge was going through, and I was on the stand, and he was asking me questions in St. Louis County, and he was asking me, is it irreconcilable? And brothers, man, all I could do, man, I was just crying, to the point to where the judge told the court reporter, stop the tape, stop the recording, and asked me. And he looked over and he answered, he said, "Oh, are you okay?" He said, "Well, do you need a moment?" And I'm an open man, just bawling. And I told him, I need to just get through this. And the judge, he leaned over and he told me, he said, "I don't know you." He said, "But from the man that I see," he said, "you're gonna be great." This is a white judge, never knew me. And I remember leaving off that stand, going into the bathroom there in St. Louis County, and the tears in my eyes were so red. And I went home, and I got a call from one of my partners, nameless. He was like, "Man," he said, "No, man, we need to celebrate." For me, that was not a celebration. That was a failure. That was a hard period. I just stayed locked into, that was like a Thursday, right? Because that Wednesday before, I had to leave work early, because I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for the judge, for the lawyer to let me know. I had to leave work early. I was working with the agency. I had to leave. And my phone was cut off. I remember it was like life was really, really difficult. Phone was cut off. I went to a payphone, called my attorney, said, I've been trying to reach you. You got court tomorrow, because I was just emotionally messed up, man. And so I went in that Thursday. The divorce was final. And that whole weekend, I just stayed locked into the house. I lived in a little apartment off of Highland in St. Louis City, and stayed locked in that house. I remember my pastor at the time came knocking on the door, and I didn't even open the door for him, you know, because it was just that I was that deep in depression, man, that deep into with dealing with what was going on in my life. And that depression, man, that thing existed for years. And this really realized that I was living a depressed life and did not even understand, couldn't even recognize it, man.
Man,
So,
thanks for sharing that with us, man. So you say you were living in a depressed state. Describe that. What were you going through? So you were crying at this stage, but during that time, what was going on?
So during that time, Tedrick was going through the issues and having domestic issues with the kid's mom and things like that. And then the feeling of failure, the guilt, because it's also the things that I decided to do, which led to this turning point in my life or what have you, dealing with shame from, because while I was in college, my first time in college, I was doing really well. And I made bad decisions that set my life into a different course. Having interference with my relationship with my kids, you know, all these things is going. I can remember riding down 70 near the airport, and you have that little area that where 70 turns into 170. You have to go like around, and it's like almost like a little ramp where it's high enough that if you just veered, you're gonna go down. I remember getting the thought in my head and was like, you know, man, you could just take this car and just ram it through and just go on over on the other side. You know, and just all those, man, that kind of thoughts going on in my head, you know, and the anger, just periods of anger, really bad anger. I remember, man, I get so mad, and you all we've talked. I was like the Hawk, and when I tell you all that, I'm not joking, man. I'm be like, I would get so mad, man. And I remember having someone gave me a really, really beautiful entertainment stand with glass and everything, and I get so mad with this phone. I had this cordless phone, I threw it and busted it. And in my mind, I said, that's the last time I tear up something that belonged to me. No, and so dealing with these things, man, and dealing with this kind of up and down, and not being able to trust, and all this stuff, man. It was just like, and really the only thing that would really get me through is at late at night, I had access to the church. And at that time, and thank God for Bishop Coleman, I had access to the church. And because I would open up church, close church, or whatever. And I would go in, and my kids would probably remember, we would go in and spend the night in the church. Not that I have a place to go, but I would just have to spend the night in the church. I would lay literally on the altar. I would lay them on the pews with blankets, and I would lay on the altar. And that's the only place that I could find. And it had nothing to do with the church as much as it had to do with building that relationship and trying to hold on close to that relationship that I had with God. And because that was the only thing that really I felt like was solid in my life, you know. And so, man, and literally just and then I was transitioning. I had to move from out in the county and grew up in the county. Had to move to the city, and thank God for a good friend. He had properties, but that place on Highland was not the caliber place that I was used to living in. And so, man, I was out there, cats running through the yard, shooting. Kids can go outside and play. Man, I mean, literally running through shooting like at one another. I'm like, and then cats breaking into the car, and then ended up moving from there down to Kate's. And it was, even though it was a family house, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, you know, and what I was used to. So it was all this transition that was going on, being a single father. Even though I wasn't single, it felt like it because she and I, the kid's mom and I, wasn't getting along at all. You know, no shape, form, or fashion. There was no co-parenting going on at all. You know, it was like back and forth, you know. So all that, man, was going on in the head or what have you, you know. And then, you know, I'm gonna be honest, just, you know, also had all these women and all these individuals that was in my lives, and just like it was, my mind, man, was just like, and I'm functioning, but just barely, you know. And the crazy thing about it through this period was, I remember my landlord at the townhouse where I stayed in, she came to me. She knew I was going through this, right? And so she came to me and she asked me to go talk to a neighbor. It was another man, an African-American man who was living across the way. I'd never met him before. She asked me, would you go talk to him because he's going through the same thing and he's not dealing with it as good. And I went to talk to that brother. Man, this brother was, and this is, I thank God for the saving grace, but this brother was going through, he was dealing with cocaine and alcohol addictions, and he wasn't dealing with his transition good at all. And so Lord help me see, I can keep you through yours if you trust me, you know. So man, so I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me. I don't know if it's something about divorce, but I seem to remember my divorce being finalized on a Thursday. I didn't get to go before the judge, but
Okay.
so I don't know what happened. I was looking forward to going before the judge. Oh yeah, I was ready. And somehow she just signed all the papers from the back. I never even met my judge, right? I was expecting to go through, because we weren't co-parenting either. It took years for us to get to the point of co-parenting. We went through the whole meet up at the police station and all this other craziness, or I'm supposed to pick them up and she doesn't open the door. I mean, it was just a lot. My depression though came prior to that. I mean, I had a couple of bouts, I think, but the most significant one was realizing I was living what I call a semi-charmed life, right? You know, I have to admit this on this podcast. Wow. But
That's what it's
it's
about.
the truth,
Mhm.
I had love for my wife, but I wasn't in love with my wife when we got married, right? It was
Mhm.
more about stability, and okay, I can grow into to being in love, right? And
Mhm.
um, there were just some things that we didn't know, you know, being young, 20. I think I was married at 25, 26. So,
Mhm.
it was a decision. That's what we're gonna do, and I think, the feelings were there for her. Not I had the feelings, but it just, it couldn't progress because I think the relationship really had run its course. We had dated through college, right? And it was just
Mhm.
kind of familiarity. And we built a pretty decent life, went through but it was semi-charged. Like I wasn't living up to my potential because I was pouring into that situation. I'm just going to be a good husband. And I realize I'm doing this mainly because, I don't know what good looks like. So, I'm going to imitate what I believe. And so it wasn't for me. And I didn't understand how to talk through it or how to work through it. So I just became depressed, withdrew. Last 2 years of our marriage, we didn't talk. Like literally lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, didn't say anything unless it had something to do with the kids or bills. That's it. There was nothing. And then I engaged in self-destructive behavior. I know we talked about this too. And then comes the divorce. And then, the gamesmanship and, what I mean, things happen. So that really took me to a dark place, struggling financially. So, I mean, that resonates with me. And I turned to gambling. Someone asked me, they said, why do you look at things differently? And I said, because I had $100,000 less, you know,
Mhm.
and it's sobering when you see that much money that you've lost through a period of time
Mhm.
because of self-destructive behavior. And that's how I chose to deal with my depression and I really thought that I was healed and I was still damaging people as I tried to date because I didn't really understand it. It wasn't until I went to counseling after I lost my job.
Mhm.
So I still hadn't learned my lesson after losing all of that, lost my job. And that's when I said, okay, I got to talk to somebody because I'm just not going to make it. And when I learned the tools, I mean, this real, and how you thought about the thoughts of I could just end it now. I thought about that too. It's just like, nobody knows that because I've never said it out loud. You know, now I don't even think I told my counselor that because I was just afraid. But now I can talk about that because I was like, man, just hearing you talk about it's like, man, I had those thoughts. I was just like, maybe things would be better if I just went here. Things would just be easier. And I just kept hearing the voice say, keep going. I got it. And then I lose my job. And now I'm thankful that those two things didn't happen at the same time. Because if they had, I might not be here having this conversation. So the Lord knew exactly how much to put on me and how to do it incrementally to change my thought process. But I mean, it's a dark place, and it's hard going through that. I didn't have access to the church to lay on the altar, but I mean, all I could do is pray. And I just look at it like maybe God was positioning me at that point to make sure I'm gonna take everything away from you that you're used to. Because everywhere I would go for help financially, dried up. I couldn't get nothing from nobody, even the people that would always say yes. And I had to struggle through some stuff, even almost being to the point of almost being evicted, at one point because it was just such a financial strain. But it taught me some things, and I'm still working through it. But man, I definitely resonate with what you were talking about. Just felt it.
Yeah, man, it is. It's critical, man, and I don't think that most of the mental health, I believe, and I've seen this because working with the agency, one of my roles was a mental health like specialist, right? And then I worked in drug court, and so we had the mental health court, and we had two types. We had a regular mental health court, but then we had those who were really had really bad mental health issues. That and theirs was also dealt with drugs, right? So you have mental health and drugs. That's called what we call dual diagnosis. But working in that space, man, and really dealing with it, you start to understand that oftentimes the mental health, part of the mental health is not external, it's internal. It's the things that you've done yourself, right? It's how you put yourself in this position, and you have to deal with and work through the fact that you're partly responsible. It's different if somebody else does it to you. But when you have to come to the realization that you're really responsible, or at least partly responsible for the situation, the status, the condition you find yourself in, that's a whole nother level of dealing with your mentals, man. That's a whole nother level because you can't leave yourself, right? The one person you cannot escape is yourself. When you lay down at night and things like that, you rehearsing, you going through folks that told you not to do it and you did it, the things that you did, the things that folks know you did, and the things folks don't know you did, right? And you're doing all that stuff, the stuff that you know within yourself, that if you had not done, some told you, said, don't do it. Some was telling you, don't do this, don't do this. You said, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. And man, boom, you look up, and now you have to deal with the consequences of your actions. And those things, man, those are the things that get you.
If that wasn't me, I'm gonna do it my way. People said, "Are you sure you're ready to get married?" Now they didn't come out and say no. You know what I mean? They was just like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, and I remember the first pastor we went to wouldn't marry us. It's like, I don't know you all. I don't know if you're ready. Oh, I was determined we're gonna find somebody. And I said all the right things, but I really think about it, I wasn't ready. And the thing is, she's not a bad person, right? And it took me a while to get to that point. It was just the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't trying to take any guidance from anybody, and I was gonna do what I felt was right. And so I did carry that blame and that guilt, and having to deal with that and process what was my part in this situation. I know what she did. I know what she did and how it made me feel, but how did I get here? To this point? What decisions did I make so I don't make those decisions again, and find myself in that situation? I mean, I can make all the mistakes in dating that I want right now, But when I get ready to get married, my decision making needs to be clear, and I need to be very clear on what it is I'm doing. Um, and that's my plan. It's just the fact that I think back to that, and I was just like, you know what, I wasn't honest with anybody in that situation about how I
Man.
truly felt, not even myself. I can do this because I believe I've just been drilled in me. You can do anything you put your mind to.
Mm-hmm.
But there, boy, I'm telling you, that you can if you're honest.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's true,
Well,
man.
brothers, I appreciate y'all just like opening up and talking about like your divorces and stuff. My situation didn't come from a divorce. And I know some guys that have the whole like mental health issues, depression. Mine was like you guys, more situational, where mine was really the birth of my first child.
Okay.
You do the math. I met her mom in September. I had a baby that next September. Boom, 20 years old. So, and you guys know, my growing up was pretty smooth. My dad in the household, dad I could talk to the whole 9 yards. So at 19 years old, I'm about to be a dad. And it is, you step up to the plate and you handle your responsibilities. But her parents want me to get married. My parents like, don't get married. I'm a sophomore in college. So my grades are starting to impact just because of the stress. Can't sleep, can't focus on anything. And then when a child is born, you're trying to make it work. I'm getting to know myself. And how do I get to know this person after basically a year? Me met 3 months later. Obviously, she's pregnant that January, and we're young, getting to know each other. So we're arguing, trying to co-parent. And to me, the hardest decision I made was breaking up with her mom and moving back home. And that was a 2.5-hour distance to see my daughter. And my stress came with, she dictated when I can see my daughter, when I can. If everything was cool, I can get her. Then she may be like, oh, you're late, you can't have your daughter. Just all kinds of crazy stuff. But my stress really hit me would be, I would give my daughter the weekend, I'd drop her off. And when I drop her off, I could just tell she's showing me old toys, she's pulling on my legs, she don't want me to leave. And I wouldn't show emotion there, but I would start my way home and I pull on the side of the road and I would just like cry uncontrollably because I'm just dropping off my daughter. And you know, at that point, like that's my sweetheart. That's my girl. And I honestly, the pain was so hard on me, and I know it was for her because I mean she's little, so she really couldn't even articulate, Dad, I miss you. I drop off, but she was just crying. And I used to think, would it be better if I just stopped showing up and picking her up? Would that be easier? Because it was killing me to drop her off and then come back and not see her for 2 weeks. So my stress came from that, stress from dealing with her mom, co-parenting, different thoughts, and calling my daughter. She couldn't talk on the phone. By the time we broke up, she was probably about 18 months old. She couldn't talk. She'd pick up the phone, daddy, you know, but not any deep conversations, but that's my stress, where I couldn't sleep, really couldn't talk, just very emotional. So,
Man, you know, and I don't think that the world really realizes, man, just how I don't believe that men are unfeeling, right? We men become unfeeling because we have to protect ourselves. But situations like this, like the relationship with our children, is critical. And that's whether a man was raised with his father or parents or whether he wasn't. That man wants to have a relationship. There are very few men, in my opinion, that just don't want to be in their children's lives, right? And so it's situations like this, like, you know, like Brother Tony was talking about, and having that distance, having that negativity fed into them, that impacts us, man. You know, man, that impacts us and causes us to have these issues, you know. And so, man, it's important. Thank you for sharing that, because I can relate to that. And I think that most men who are dealing with these issues of depression and mental health and things like that can relate to that, you know. So, you know, we have brother I Widowmaker, who's Brother Evans. He's been with us before. Matter of fact, he joined us last time. He's the brother that studied the Omega and also Masonic. We're gonna bring him on. He's gonna we're going to send him a link so he can join us on live on there, because he shared something very interesting. He said, one thing that I could say about my experience on this topic is how separated I was when I returned from Iraq. I was reaching out to experts only to be told that everything I was feeling was normal. So he's going to join us and talk to us about this issue about depression from a whole nother level. And we're going to invite any brother that is listening in today that want to join us live today. Send us a message, man. And you see our email right there on the chat. Send us a message. We'll send you a direct link so you can join us on this Zoom live today. We don't want to put it out just openly, because last time we did that, we had some strangers jump in, man.
Yeah.
So we trying to monitor and make sure. But this is National Mental Health Week. Month, right? And so we want to talk about this conversation that deals with Black men and mental health, right? Mental health, MEN. Mental health, and we as men, we need help. I want to share real quick, and you all know we believe in educating, so I want to share real quick and bring in a conversation. I'm always out there listening and reading and things like that, so I want to share my screen and see if we can bring in and have build on this conversation a little bit. We'll share tidbits from this discussion that talks about mental health from a Black male perspective. So should be able to see that.
Hello, and welcome to Primary Care. I'm your host, Dr. Lonnie Joe. Depression is one of the most common mental disorders in the United States and affects an estimated 17 million people each year. Black men are just as likely as anyone to have depression, but less likely to get help for it. Left untreated, depression can lead to chronic conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, sexual dysfunction, substance abuse, and even death. According to the Centers for Disease Control, suicide is the third leading cause of death for African American males aged 15 through 24. Black men can no longer live in silence and in the shadows of this treatable condition. Here to shed more light on this topic is Dr. Harold Woody Neighbors. Dr. Neighbors is a CS Mod endowed professor of public health at the Michigan State University College of Human Medicine. His research focuses on developing community-based programs that improve the health of Black men. Dr. Neighbors, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us, Woody. Excellent. Depression. Everybody has touched it or been embraced by it sometimes in their life. Black men seem to suffer disproportionately from the disease. Black men, why?
Well, it's not clear to me that we suffer disproportionately from the disease of depression, but I have to say that we, more than any other group, are not getting the help that we need.
So the
and
results
not getting the help
stands
that
out.
we deserve.
Good point. So the results of being depressed stands out because it's untreated.
Exactly. So I think the question that comes up is, why won't Black men seek help?
Man, I'm gonna stop it there for a minute. He asked a very critical question. So we see that mental health is not just in our mind, right? We also see the mental health deals with our body. It impacts us high blood pressure. It impacts us diabetes. It impacts our ability to sleep, our cognitive awareness. It impacts every part of our lives, right? And so we see that the impact of mental health, man, because and you all know the Bible is one of my foundation. The Bible says, "As a man thinketh, so is he." Right. And so as his mind is his mind, and it says we have to be renewed by the transforming of our mind. And so when we look at mental health, we're looking at at how we think and the things that impact how we think and how all those things have an impact on our lives. But he asks a question. He says, man, why we don't seek help? You know, so other than the stigma, what do you think? What are some of the reasons why we don't seek help?
I think that's a big part. Stigma, the feeling of inadequacy. I mean, we're taught we have to be strong. So admitting that there's a problem is I think a huge issue that requires vulnerability, that if we have not necessarily understood the power in being vulnerable, it's very difficult to say, I need help. Let me go talk to somebody about these issues. I know they're there. I mean, I know what my issues were. I just didn't want to deal with them. I would put everything in front of that, which is where we've talked about this, where the emptiness comes in. So I'm gonna focus on education. Okay, I got that degree. Now what? I'm gonna get this job. Okay, I got the job. Now what? We always think that there's something more that we can do to distract us from the fact that we have to deal with the problems that are there. But until we deal with them, the problems are still there. And it was in that season where I went to work. I work for the Department of Mental Health at this time, right? So I should know how important mental health is.
Yeah.
However, I was losing myself mentally because I literally had to put down my problems at the door, take on everybody else's problems throughout the day. Because in HR, you're gonna be a counselor, a teacher, you're gonna be a defense attorney, you're gonna be a prosecuting attorney. You have a lot of responsibility that you have to make decisions on, and your words matter. So I would have to put that down, and then I remember as soon as 4:30 hit, and I'm on hit the elevator button on my way down to the car, everything that I'm dealing with flooded back. And it's like on the ride home, and until I got there, I would, for a minute, I did shut myself in my house. It was just, I was so emotionally drained. I didn't want to do anything after. Well, then here comes the weight gain, right? Because, you eat, you sleep, all of that, which was my sign of depression. And I think that's it. It's just, how do I admit as a strong person that I need help? Do I recognize that I need help, or do I feel like I can take this on by myself? I can conquer anything. And that was kind of my thought process. I can do this. I had to lose my job before I realized I need to say this stuff out loud. And I got so much further after just talking to that counselor for 6 weeks about work, but then finding out there's other issues that are there.
Yeah.
That's bigger than my job, because the job no longer exists now. So now we got to work on me.
That's it.
True. Because I wrote down 2 thoughts, and you kind of hit both of them. Because the first one was that we're taught to just tough it out, suck it up, move on, keep rolling. And I think the other one is to identify the signs and be able to tell somebody, hey, I think you're depressed. Because I look at, from my first job to my second job, I was laid off, and it might have been about a 9-10 month period. And I can recall having back pain. My back was tight, my back was hurting, my back was just knotted up. And when I got offered the new job, I was thinking like, man, well, my back really killing me. How can I be on my feet all day long? When I start the new job, my back stopped hurting. So it let me understand that I carry stress in my back. So the whole depression part was that. So it is understanding that it is your appetite changing. You're not eating, you're sleeping too much, or you have a headache. And then, like I said, in my case, my back was hurting. So it's understanding the signs and acknowledging that, hey, something's going on. I'm depressed. I need to get help. So I say we don't go because maybe limited access to services. We've been taught to man up, tough it out, and maybe not even understand the signs that we are depressed. Oh man, I'm staying up all night. Somebody may say go to bed early. Instead of saying, hey, something going on, are you overthinking something? It is, get some sleep. Why are you staying up and watching TV all day? So it's almost how you respond to somebody saying, hey man, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating.
Man, I'm telling you, we want to welcome Brother Evans, man. Welcome to the table. We appreciate you taking our time to join us this morning. How you feeling, man?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Morning.
Dr. Rice.
Hey, brother.
Great topic. It's something I think we need to address in our community in terms of right now, as I understand it, the question is, why don't Black men seek mental health? I just heard a commercial. Part of it is stigma. I don't want to go see a therapist. I don't want to see a shrink. And as I stated with you, one of the problems is a lot of times, and this is just in general, we wait till it's too late until for something to happen. I heard somebody say, I lost my job. Somebody was talking about suicide. And I was blessed from a childhood experience with my father to realize sometimes you have to understand that when things are going kind of way out of control. Thank you for saying that. When I was when I came back from Iraq, I knew I wasn't myself. I got extended in Iraq. That brought back some bad memories. Then when I came back, I was just completely separated from my family. I'm not trying to take the conversation over, but I would go to who they said go talk to if you're struggling, and they say, "Oh, that's normal." And in hindsight, I wish they had said, "Hey, man, look, you're going through normal dejection. Come back in a month and let's assess it then." But they didn't say that. They just said, "You're normal." And I'm thinking, and please understand, one of my fears was in 2003, and you can go back to articles, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines were coming back and killing families. And I wasn't trying to be one of them. I came back my second time in 2004 or 2005. And so that was one of my fears. So I just kind of trying to cope with it the best way I could. Thank God I didn't become a raging alcoholic or completely out of control. Managed to obtain a top secret clearance. But yeah, we do need to reach out for help. And if somebody, and like the one man said, I didn't have a church to turn to, keep asking and keep praying. Somebody's going to be able to give you an answer.
That's it.
So,
Matt, go ahead, Brother Tony.
Okay, Brother Everett, you say you wasn't yourself. Break that down even more. You came back, was it paranoia? I'm just throwing that out there. Like, I know some soldiers, they don't like the 4th of July because you have fireworks going off and things like that. So you were not yourself. Were you paranoid? Wait, for the listeners, break that down a little bit more. What were you going through?
Okay, a huge part of it was a lack of concern for a lot of different things. A lot of times I would be enthusiastic about my son or doing things with my wife, and I just wasn't there. I was kind of standoffish, so to speak. I didn't care about a lot of things, and I felt like a lot of people didn't care about me. So it's hard to reach back and say what it was, because like I said, we're talking about 16 years, praise God. But like I said, I knew that something was off kilter. And so I knew to raise the flag because I had seen certain things before. So what I'm getting at is when I go and talk to the chaplain, when I would make my that you don't feel the same, and I'm thinking, no, something is definitely not right now. Okay, I understand. I just came from a long deployment, and yes, I literally went to bed in a tent where Iraqi soldiers or whatever were launching bombs across a fence to try to kill Americans, and I could hear that. So I'm literally going to sleep to the sounds of dynamite. And here's a change that it still would be today. Now I could sleep through anything. Okay, all are from St. Louis, right? So I grew up in a neighborhood around Page and Kings Highway. And so I heard, a siren would alarm me. Now I don't hear it. And other things of that nature. It's like, wait a minute, something's really off kilter on that. And so one thing, like the man was saying, I dated my wife in high school and we got married and then we went without talking. I can relate to that too. And sometimes if you have early signs, you yourself can try to intervene and change the course of the trajectory before it gets too late. Me being a divorcee myself, I was married once before, and I was at that point too. But What I'm saying is I raised the flag because I had just come back from Iraq. Soldiers and Marines were killing their families, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to be next. I don't want. Is this the start of that? And so that was it. If you all remember, like in 07, 08, there was like a public service commercial where people were asking Iraq returnees, hey, why are you so separated? And I was like, oh, so now that at least somebody is saying something, because it's a feeling that's hard for me to describe, but it was like, yeah, I would just kind of like a walking zombie, so to speak, in a lot of ways.
No, man.
I hope I answered your question, Bird.
Yes, yes, sir.
You know, when we think about this situation, you know, and we think about one things we take our notes while individuals are talking. No, but one of the things we don't think about is the post-traumatic stress, right? And in Brother Evans' case, we're dealing with post-traumatic stress from a war zone, actual military war zone experience. But what about, you know, our brothers who go through post-traumatic stress from living in war zone torn areas, meaning, and when I say war zone, I'm not just talking about like the neighborhood. I'm talking about homes, right? Growing up in home situations. I'm talking about war zone areas and relationships. I'm talking about war zone areas within themselves, right? Because when we're dealing with ourselves, we're dealing with when we're dealing with our own consciousness of ourselves, our cognitive selves, self-esteem, things of that nature, right? I'm talking about war zone areas when it comes to our emotions and really dealing with our emotions and having these torn emotions, how this post-traumatic stress, how these events, and we can't determine whether an event is great or small and the impact it's going to have on someone's life, you know, for years to come. It could be something such as experiencing an accident that could create this post-traumatic stress in a person that could impact them where they never want to drive again. It don't have to be like this awesome, someone lose their lives. Just the fact that someone may be getting hurt or cut off on the highway, and it's just a bad day for that, right? So we have to really start to think about, man, the impact of post-traumatic stress and how that has an impact. Sometimes, and I'm gonna pass it, sometimes it's vicarious stress, right?
Yeah.
It's the vicarious stress that we feel from watching others go through things. Brother Evans spoke about that. And I know myself, when I started dealing with my mental health, I started thinking about my family, right? And the men in my family. And I can remember having uncles and things like that who alcoholism ran rampant in our home. It ran rampant in our family. It was rampant in the community, right? And you had weed smoking, but really all I really saw at the time was a lot of drinking. But you ain't really understand why these men are drinking so much, right? And waking up to drink and go to bed to drink and before they can get their day going and all this other stuff, man. And then remembering uncles who you at the time they called and they said, you know, that's just Uncle Joe. He just, you know, kind of crazy. But really not understanding that that's a diagnosable disease. What we did in our families, we put them in a room somewhere and we just made sure that they ate and stayed out the community eye, but didn't get the help that was necessary to really help them deal with whatever the issue. Maybe it was no trust in the medical profession. Maybe it's no resources in order to get them the proper medical assistance or whatever the case is. But that's how we generalize it, right?
Yeah.
We were just told to leave them alone.
And that's an important piece. And thank you, Brother Evans, for sharing your experience. You know, and as we think about this, when we're talking to the listener that is going through some things that aren't necessarily identifiable. Right? I mean, if your mom didn't didn't support you while let's say you ran track, and your parents didn't support you, that's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
A lot of things that we deal with of not getting that, because I mean, I don't know if families are just conditioned to the point that men don't need the same support that we might show a woman or a young girl. And I've often heard that. We're gonna probably delve into like coping strategies and things like that, where alcohol is rampant, or drug use, or my addiction of choice during that period was gambling. Right, I had this addiction where I just couldn't stop, but I was telling myself I could stop at any moment, and then I'll drain my whole bank account, and now I got to figure out how I'm gonna make it for 2 weeks because I just spent all my money. And so, you know what I mean? And it was because of issues that weren't so prevalent. I'd never been to a war zone. I didn't grow up in the hood and all of that. It was really just the fact of all of these things that I got from a rejection standpoint. And even I battle with that now, and it wasn't, I don't know if it was intentional. I don't think it was. I think my mama just called me right now. So, you know what I mean? So it wasn't intentional. I think it was just realizing that my parents didn't know how to provide that support. We didn't talk about it. We weren't affectionate. And so I'm left. So I find myself now talking to my kids. I said something to my 10-year-old. I said, go where you're celebrated. Make sure you go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. He don't know what that means. But I need to plant that seed right now in his head to where I can explain that later. Daddy, what did that mean when we get ready to talk? Because those are things that weren't put into me. And so every rejection, any female that rejected me, or getting cut from a baseball team, and being able to bounce back, we suppress those feelings. At least I did. And I think a lot of us do. And then they bubble up. They're still there. And we don't deal with them because of the stigma. I'm tough. I'm just going to suck it up, like Tony said. And I'm going to power through. And then it affects everything else that we do. I made decisions about marriage based upon these suppressed feelings of rejection that caused me to settle for, not settle, I don't want to say settle, because she was a good woman. It was the fact of the matter that I didn't know how to express the love that I needed to bring the best out of her. So we just couldn't figure out how to make it work. And that was on me because I was honest about, hey, this is me. We didn't know each other. 7 years we were married and didn't know each other, and all of that stuff that happened to me before is what led up to that. And like I say, and finally, and she didn't remember. We were at my son's part, and I'll pass it. But we were a couple of weeks ago, about a month or two ago. He's March, so we were May. So. But we met up and took him to Kokomo Joe's, and I just said something that I guess affected her. And she called me and wanted to talk about it, which is I just randomly stated, I was depressed. You didn't notice? And she called it out while we were married. She said, "What are you, depressed?" One day, just out of the blue. And that's what got me to thinking that maybe I am. Like, I'm not myself. And I reminded her that. So she called me 2 weeks after and wanted to talk through that. And so even though that's like years ago, it was just the fact of the matter of that so it could be war, it could be trauma from, different aspects. I've told my story a lot, but sometimes it's just, when we're not dealing with that, we're carrying it forward, and then we're trying to build positive relationships and do positive things. And it's still recurring, and we're still making the same decisions and making the same mistakes. We're just hiding it better, or hiding it, and to the point where we can't hide it anymore. And so, I don't know where I'm going with that part, but it's out there.
No, man, you saying some really good things, and then what you guys have said made me reflect on some stuff, like you said, like 15, 20 years ago. And just saying, when you were going through your divorce at the end, and your guy was like, let's hang out and kick it. I would say, I would say, I don't think I was an alcoholic, but I would say binge drinking after me and my daughter's mom broke up, because my boy was like, let's go kick it. And I thought it's like, okay, my boy, we just going out. But I'm sure it helped me go through that depression of not being with my daughter. And even because I withdrew from college, from school, got back in school, and we were roommates, and we were out kicking it every other weekend. Like, we handled our business during the week. We were out basically binge drink on the weekend. So I wasn't gambling, but I was kicking it,
Mm-hmm.
drinking, things like that. So the thing about it now, like that was probably my coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember honestly getting to like that crossroads of this is getting old. I gotta focus on other stuff. But yeah, I can think for the longest time, man, I probably couldn't have a beer to have a beer. It was all about getting buzzed and going out to the club, going to the college bar, whatever. And man, it just hit me just now, like that was that time period after the breakup.
Yeah. And I say this real quick. I went to the casino last night and didn't spend a dime. I just walked around watching other people lose their money. And there was a time where I could not do that. It was literally, I'm getting ready to go to the ATM and take out take out $1,000 and I'm going to win. And they take all my money. But it's been positive to be able to say, all right, I can go. Let me go see what they're doing. And then I walk out of there with everything I walked in there with. It took a while.
That's it.
Well, one thing in this conversation, you said, well, we support women, but our men, we tend not to think they need support. Someone said that, I don't recall who, but one thing I'm gonna say, we're trying to reverse the course of a battleship as opposed to a speedboat.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, when I was about 18, 19 years old, my mother told me, she said, Barry, in the Black community, we educate our women because we believe that our men can go to the plants and be okay. They can go to Chevy and be okay. They can go to Ford and be okay. They can go to Snooks and be okay. And that's not necessarily the case all the time. So what I'm saying is we tend to guide our women down the path of education and getting a skill that's marketable and relying on men to make it on their brawn alone in our community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And somehow that paradigm has to change.
Yeah.
Brother Bird, you mentioned having an aha moment. That's what I would call it. When you say, hey, this drinking is getting old. The sad part is a lot of our men don't realize that aha moment until it's way late.
Too late, yeah.
And I thank God that I had an aha moment. I remember, it involved alcohol. I remember I was like 22-ish, and I opened up a regular Pepsi and it tasted strange. I was like, uh-oh, we got a problem. So, and I remember thinking at that time, ain't no dude, Bird ain't gonna let me holler at his sister if that's how I am. Rice ain't gonna let me holler at his sister or his best friend if this is how I am. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and tone this down a little bit. And people were looking at me a little sideways. I was in the Air Force at the time, and I completely turned some things around. I didn't do a full circle, but I started acting bad. And this senior NCO, he pulled me aside and said, boy, I was scared for you. So, and then another thing, a young soldier here recently told us, he said, sometimes, and I think about you, Patrick, when you talk about you went to the casino or whatever, sometimes you can pick up a new sin trying to run away from an old one.
Yes.
So
Man, that's
when
wild.
when you're trying to get away from that bottle, you can pick up gambling. When you're trying to run away from gambling, you can pick up porn.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Very vicious. You can, I'm 55, 56, right? And it's like a lot of men our age in these 50s, they tend to do things that are not necessarily the wisest, like chase a 30-year-old woman. You know?
It's true. Trying to revigorate them or feel reinvigorated instead of accepting exactly where we are right now and working in the space that we're in.
I want to say you can do that at 30 too. You're 30, so just say it. Somebody younger, I mean.
Man, when we look at the situation, I want to go back real quick to our video and share a little bit more of that kind of started this part of our conversation. So let me share that.
Problem for all men, but I think it's a more pressing problem for Black men. And it's not just for depression, it's for some of the other conditions that you mentioned, diabetes, hypertension. We have a problem in reaching out to get the help that we need.
Yeah, in my office, they're the last ones through the door, and
Yeah.
you know, in terms of complaints, and then they don't complain as much. I mean,
Right.
they're so stoic with their own
Yeah.
assessment of themselves. I mean, it leads to other problems. But if you had to define depression for our viewing audience, how would you define it?
So the way I think about depression is in very personal terms. You can look in the diagnostic manual of the American Psychiatric Association, and you can read through the list of symptoms. I don't really recommend that people do that. I think there's a more basic way that we can understand depression. And the first point I want to make is that depression is not normal sadness. I'm going to say that again. It is not normal sadness. I think a lot of folks are, I think, too loose with that word depression. They say, oh, I'm depressed. What they're really saying is I'm just kind of having a bad day, a slow day. That is not depression.
There is a difference.
Oh, it's a clinical difference. And so, for example, one way I think we ought to think about this is that you really, truly don't feel like you are your normal self. I think all of us have a sense of, who we are and what we like to do during the day. So, for example, when I get up in the morning, I'm fired up and ready to go. I've had a period in my life where I was going through a very, very low period due to the loss of a child. So I was just devastated from the whole experience. So I didn't feel like getting up in the morning. Even though I had a job to go to, I didn't want to. The thing I enjoy most in the morning is a good hot shower. When I was going through this depressive episode, the thought of getting up and turning on the water and stepping into that shower seemed like an insurmountable task. Those are the kinds of things that you can look at to start to figure out, are you really into something where you need to get some professional advice about your mood?
Man, so when we think about this issue of depression, and we think about one of the things that Brother Evans brought up was the conditioning to the situation. And so sometime when we're going through depression and we're dealing with mental health issues, and I want to thank Sister White, Yolanda White, for joining us today. And so I don't want to overlook what she said. She was responding to the conversation prior to this, and I'll go back to my thoughts. She said she lost a lot of weight, even changed appearance going through her divorce. She ran back into a lot of things that were never things or places that she should have gone back to as a coping mechanism for hiding depression. Having the correct people around you is crucial in those moments. And that's so true, because one of the things that I want to talk about in relationship to what we just saw was the conditioning, right? And we become conditioned in the situation because we try to find new coping mechanisms for the stuff that we normally would do. And he talked about how having a good shower, or even him being energetic in the morning. And so in order to offset those things, we try to find other things that will help us to cope. Also, when we're looking at conditioning, and the idea of conditioning is when something persists for such a long period of time that it becomes normalized. When we stay in that state for such a long period of time, it becomes normal, so it doesn't seem like something's wrong, right? It just changed. I no longer want to go to church, right? And I kind of outgrew. I'm exploring myself spiritually, things like that. Or we break up from long-term friendships and relationships that's really been solid in our lives, and that's because I need to branch out. I need to meet new people. And we start to justify these things. We start to justify our actions, right? And you start taking off excessive days at work. Well, I need to take off days. That's not our normal character. It's not our normal way of doing things, but we start to do things that don't appear to be destructive, but in the end result can be destructive. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think about, for me, No, I think about for me, it was I was I was from like a domino from one relationship to the next, one relationship to the next. And in between that period, right, a couple of those relationships ended up in marriage and then divorce, right? And so it was the same, you do the same pattern, you go through the same patterns back to back to back to back. Right. And when I started going back and thinking about those things, oh, I probably did the same activities within the same pattern, right? Went to the same places or whatever the case is, because it became my pattern of dealing with what I did not want to deal with. I distanced myself from individuals who could really see the true me, right? They knew Saint. They knew who he was. And I would distance myself because those individuals could see into things that I didn't necessarily want to deal with at that point. Right. And so how do we deal with those, brothers? What's your thoughts about that?
Wow. That's go ahead, brother Evan.
No, what I do, you ask, how do we deal with it? That's your question, Dr. Rice. And so what I was going to say is, I look for every try to grasp hold of a motivational phrase, and that helps kind of knock me back in line. And we all have ups and downs. Going back to the video, he had he talked about depression and things of that nature, and diagnosis. Two things I want to say about that. When a person is depressed, oh, that's kind of deep. And in my own understanding of depression, he did say it seemed like a sad moment. There were times when I honestly believed that if I could smack so-and-so with a 2x4 about 2 or 3 times, I wouldn't feel this way anymore. And so that was my, I would say, coping mechanism, but I never equated it to depression. It was just a moment. And if I could just go ahead and let them know why they get on my nerves, that was it. A commercial I heard, and I was in Virginia. It was an aha moment for me. A woman comes on and she tells her friend she was depressed. And said, "Oh, girl, like Bird said," she said, "Oh, why don't we just go to the mall or go to ladies' night and we'll be okay?" And so, and then it was a little pause, and then they said, now the same woman came around and said, "I got cancer." I said, "Oh, are you gonna be okay? Are you seeing this doctor? Are you going to this cancer clinic?" And so they said, actually, depression and cancer are both illnesses. And that was an aha moment for me. And I'm standing back.
No, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. I like what you were saying. Is Brother Evans, when you said a phrase, my phrase was, "and this too shall pass," for a long time. But when you get in the real depressed moments, man, it's tough to keep that mantra going. And I'm just thinking back, man, I was angry. I mean, in 47 years, I've had other stressors, but that was my first big stressor. And I was angry for a long time. It killed my self-esteem. I wasn't doing well in school. It's tough. And I think being older, you understand there's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of deal, and you can kind of go through it. But at a certain point, you're not sure how to handle the stress that you may think, like, I'm having a bad day. Then the bad day turns into 6 months. Are you still having a bad day? You may think that, but you need somebody to say, "Hey, what's really going on?" So hopefully I answered the question, but
I think
that's my thought.
From my perspective, I turned to Jude 24. And I say this over and over and over again, and it's now unto him who is able to keep me from falling, period. I could go on into 25, but the bottom line is I reckon that's what kept coming up during my moment. and understanding that, you know, if God can come down, wrap himself in flesh, and have the a power to present, knowing everything that I've done, present me faultless before his presence. So he knows everything I've done, but wrapped himself in flesh, he came down and all he could see is his son. I was like, okay, I can get through this. I say, but you know, I think really just understanding that aspect helped me really to move forward from that dark place, kind of that moment. Let me, none of this stuff is gonna defeat me. I've got to get up. I've got to continue to do what's necessary in order to move forward. Let me recognize my issue. And what I recognize, really, one last point, is that all of this made me realize that in the eyes of my family, I was still a boy. I was still a boy. And it wasn't until I stood up and had the difficult conversations with everybody I was afraid to have that conversation with that my life changed and people started to see me as a man. So not longer Teron, a little boy that was cute 2-year-old that everybody recognizes. Now Teron is a full-grown man making his own decisions. And I was afraid because I was afraid how they were going to look at me, how they were going to treat me. And I did. We went through a period of disconnection. But when we connected again, I can move freely now. And that has been so restorative in relationships. And I think that that's a problem that some of us have, is that we're still, even though we're grown, full-grown men, we might not be seen as that person that's taken that stride and declared, okay, let me declare my manhood at this particular point. And it's not because I'm not weak because I can talk about these issues. I'm stronger because I could recognize them and talk through them. And let me tell you how I feel and how what you did made me feel. And it changed the trajectory of my life and the outlook that I had.
Man, that's powerful, you know, having that conversation there, you know, and realizing, because I think oftentimes we don't realize sometimes how much our experiences keep us in a boyhood state, right? And we, similar to what you were saying, T. Patrick, you know, oftentimes I'm almost 50. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, I'm a full-grown man, right? And it's not necessarily has anything to do with a negative reminding as much as it is understanding the space where we are. Because as we progress, and each stage comes with a ceremony, but when we didn't get that initial ceremony going into manhood, sometime, man, we have to celebrate ourselves in different aspects. Sometimes life has just happened, right? We had a kid when we got young, no real ceremony for that. We lost our virginity, no ceremony for those things. We got married. There was a ceremony, but in this view, well, in some cases, but most of the time, the man is not celebrated in a marriage ceremony, right? We get a good job. No real ceremony in that. We just get the job, right? We accomplish maybe even buying a house or something. No real ceremony in that, you know? And so we don't really get a chance to celebrate. We transition from one stage of life, we transition from one decade to the next decade, right? No true ceremonies to help us create these mile markers in our lives to celebrate our manhood, to celebrate who we are and the uniqueness of our manhood. We just grouped in. We just kind of grouped in all as one, right? With all these crabs in one barrel. And that's critical, man. That's very critical. Now, I want to share something. And this is I sent this to the guys. I'm gonna bring this up. I just wanted to share so you could pretty much see that, right? And so it's those 6 signs of depression in Black men. And this was just like a little diagram that was created to help recognize these are not all the signs, but just some things that's going on. And so number one is an increase in physical pain or chronic medical illnesses, right? And how sometimes our body is telling us that we got things going on inside of us. We're feeling that, Brother Tony talked about that back pain. We may be feeling headaches. We may be feeling some type of medical situation that's going on. Our bodies are off kilter, our blood sugar, things like that. Blood pressure is high. All these things, some swelling. We could be feeling aches, maybe where it feels like arthritis. We could be feeling tension in the back of our neck. All these things that's going on when we sleep. We could barely sleep. We toss and we turn. All these things that's going on with depression, right, could be happening in us, right? And so number two, it talks about loss of focus, and that's critical, right? And so, and focus is not just related to our jobs, but focus is related to life, and focus impacts our organization. Focus impacts our focus also impacts our ability to move from one space to the next, right? Focus impacts our ability to lead a home, or to be a good parent, or to be productive on our job. Focus also impacts our ability to stay committed, right? And so we lose that focus. Depression can slow down a man's ability to process information, and we miss things. We're not paying attention to the signs that may be coming. We're not paying attention even to the signs within relationships that we're involving ourselves in, right? We getting the information. The information is there. The red flags or whatever is there. We're just not processing it, right? Because our inability to focus. We're not seeing when that person is good for us or bad for us. Sometimes we talk about the bad ones, but sometimes we get good people in our lives that we miss that information, and they just happen to go, they happen to leave, and we're like, well, if they left, they weren't for me in the first place. And that's not always true, right? It talks about our impaired concentration. Number three is anger. And I think this is the one that we most easily relate to, especially in the Black community, because that's pretty much all they pretty much kind of subscribe Black men to, is being angry, being volatile, being violent, right? And that anger, but not really understanding where that anger is coming from. Why do I get so tense? Why do I get so mad so quickly? Why do certain things set me off, or triggers, right? And it could be related to a space of depression. It could go back to the place where we're dealing with this depression, this depressed state, prolonged depressed state. And anger does not mean that we always attack others. Sometimes anger is pointed toward ourselves. So we harm ourselves. We put ourselves in harmful conditions, harmful situations, right? And so that's critical. It says substance abuse. And we know substance abuse is alcohol, marijuana, things like that. We know there are illicit substances, but I look at that as addictions. And addictions can be anything. For me, it was Little Debbie snack cakes. That was my addiction. Whenever I felt stressed, whenever I felt overwhelmed, I always knew where a store was, or I always had Little Debbie somewhere in my desk. And the truth of addictions actually eventually lead to death. That's really what an addiction does. It kills off something. And so as a consequence of my prolonged desire to eat Little Debbie, she was 25 cents. I mean, I didn't ever think I was going to lose that relationship. Anybody I was with had to understand she was the other woman in my life, right? Because she was only a quarter. Now she like 50 cents. That was another deterrent. I'm like, how you gonna go up and then change your size on me? But when we look at substance abuse, we look at addiction, man. Eventually, my blood sugar started being jacked up. Eventually, I started to need medication. All those other things that come in, and we all have addictions. Gambling, shopping, those things are destructive. They destroy some part of our life, right? So it talks about and it talks about sexual dysfunction, the inability because depression can cause us not to want to connect, right? Or we self-connect, and that's with masturbation, things of that nature, because we're not feeling close enough to a person. And I'm talking about men here. We're not feeling close enough to a person, but we need that physical release, because sex is yes, it's about love and intimacy, but it serves a different purpose for men at times, because something about the release of that sexual release also releases the tension that's in our head sometimes. So it ain't always about, baby, I love you, as much as it is, baby, I need that so I can get to sleep, or, things of that nature. That's a whole nother conversation one day we're going to have. No. And so, but the sexual dysfunction, the inability to be connected to somebody emotionally, mentally, spiritually, but then also the physical inability, not being able to get an erection. And so what we do, we try to find other things. We may get the little blue pill or whatever the case is, or we may do some other things to try to improve or help that area, right? And so, and then it talks about suicidal thoughts. And sometimes we're not even thinking that those are suicidal thoughts. We're not even thinking just, man, that thought there is actually about death, right? We're not like overly fascinated with it. We don't have a plan. We've not gone that far. But those thoughts, those quick fleeting thoughts that, what if, right? Or, why don't you? Or maybe you look at a gun or something like that, right? And so we have these 6 signs of depression, and we'll put these signs on our on our Facebook page and put them on our website. But this is just a small tidbit of 6 signs of depression in Black men. What's your thoughts, brothers?
All right. One of the things that I look at, I heard you say you are almost 50. I think I'm the oldest dude here.
You are. I think so too.
But I don't necessarily feel old. And yes, I have health issues, the diabetes, hypertension. You hit me all up, but I'm not giving up. I continue to fight.
Yes.
But one thing I want to say, and my son really, he hit me with this. My birthday is December 23rd, 1964. A week after I was born, Jim Crow ended. So what I'm saying is, parents spent their first generation, the first 20 years under the Jim Crow construct. That was all they knew. And that's what they raised. When I was playing football for Matthews Dickey at Fairgrounds, he told me, he said, Dad, all of your coaches were fresh off of Jim Crow. So what I'm getting at is, in the Black community, we found a way to cope with being oppressed. And that energy is handed down generation after generation after generation. And so back to what I said, we're trying to move a battleship and not a speedboat. and so Winger, Shipley said, he wrote The Working Poor. Most Black men walk around trying to intimidate people because that is a defense mechanism. And that's some of the spirits that we carry just forward, period. Because as on Page and King's Highway, you couldn't look soft or weak. And if you had to look like you could do that, well, when you go into, say, where I live now in Mascouda, Illinois, yeah, it's very different in terms of what's wrong with him. And so some of the things, I think because of our condition, we don't even realize that we're doing. We think it's normal. Like you said, okay, that's Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe is, okay, we're just gonna put him in a room somewhere. The sad part is, for even our community in American history, Uncle Joe was a genius. And I have a personal story on that end. A genius, but because of his condition, because of Jim Crow, he can't express it. So one of the things, like I said, when I look at that, I look at some of it is conditioning, and we are not alert to, oh, this shouldn't be, because it's been that way for so long. And I'll stand down.
Yeah, I like how you say it's the conditioning. I think about the perpetuation of stuff, because I think like we all play a certain role. And this is a story that happened yesterday. With the job I do, I was doing a home visit, and a gentleman wanted to do something. And I was like, no, you can't do it. And tears started welling up in his eyes. And for that split second, I was like thinking, what are you crying for? Like my initial response. And then I'm thinking, he can't go nowhere. He about to face some time in the Bureau of Prisons. Maybe his girlfriend gonna break up with him if he can't like hang out with her at night, things like that. So he's depressed, but my initial response was, dude, what you crying for? And I think we perpetuate that too, as far as like, tough it up, why are you crying, things like that. So I just think that we play a role, but I know this dude is depressed on everything that's going on. So I caught myself yesterday, like he got way more going on inside his head. So I think we got to do a better job of recognizing our responses too. Like I didn't say anything to him. I just kept talking, but that split second. So, I mean, that was kind of something that hit me.
Yeah. Wow.
But you muted us, right?
Right, I'm back. So yeah, man. This has been a really good conversation, man, and I'm glad that we had this conversation, that we start this conversation today. Because it is something that needs to be talked about in our communities when we're thinking about the impact of mental health, and just being in a safe space where we can share. Where we can share our thoughts and experiences and things like that. Because one of the things that when I read about it, one of the things that is most impactful is creating a sense of community. And when we create this sense of communities where there are safe spaces where people can begin to really feel as if they are heard, right? And they can talk about the experiences, the people start to realize, man, I need help, right? And once they start to feel like they feel okay to get the help, then they start to ask, well, T. Patrick or Brother Evans or Brother Burr, man, who'd you go to? And if you trust them, then I trust them, right? And then they can start to branch out to those spaces and get the help they need. But it's a one-on-one situation where we begin to have these critical conversations. I know, Brother Evans, that one of these podcasts, I do want to bring up the impact of the military. I have quite a few family members and friends who've done careers in the military, and they're African Americans. And so I know there's been some conversation about whether or not Black people should be in the military and all this other stuff. But that would be a really good conversation to talk about that, and talk about the impact of military, because I appreciate you being transparent and talked about when you got out, when you came home, things like that, and things you dealt with. Because I have some friends I believe are dealing with some of the same issues. So thank you for joining us today with that.
I think you got to throw in too, not as far as just what they went through like in the battlefield, but just the structure of the military as well, as far as promotions, advancements. I'm not saying it's a good old boy system, but I'm sure in certain parts that like you're overlooked because you are Black. So that you got to throw that in there too. So it is all of it in the military.
Well, one thing, yeah, it's not all roses, I'm not gonna lie. However, let's say this is my thing on the military and Black people. I once asked a dude, I said, man, what do you think of that phrase, military no place for Black men? He said, if Black people are going to be Americans, they need to get involved in every facet of its existence.
Hmm.
So we need to be in the military. We need to aim, even though it may be a glass ceiling. As President Trump pointed out for Hillary Clinton, we still got to tap on it. You know, you've got to try to get into those entities. A young man, if I try to be a CEO, like I tried to get into airport management, okay, and I didn't make it, but that's fine. But I tried. So if I share my experience with a young man behind me, he said, "What happened?" Well, I think I dropped the ball here. Then he can say, "Well, I'm gonna pick it up at that point, and I'm gonna go forward." But if we don't have any references, then we're just gonna stay where, you know, things are not going to change. That's why we have people like Vice President Harris. We had President Obama. We have to honestly continue to try. The other thing I want to say about the military, it is a good, if you have a plan, if you're an 18-year-old young man or young lady and say, "Hey, look, I'm gonna go ahead and do 4 years in the Army and come out and go to school," that's a good plan. And we shouldn't deter that person's plan, because not everybody gets a 4-year scholarship for whatever reason, even academic or athletic, to get ahead. Not everybody has a plan. So that's a good way to get some things taken care of. And you should, I strongly advise that you take advantage of it.
ROTC as well.
Dr. Wright.
That's it, man. And it's very critical, you know, that we do. It's very critical that we do that, man, and that we be a part of every facet. And I believe that that's where, you know, that's where we are starting to change the dynamic and turn that ship around, as Brother Edmonds was talking about, and really deal with it, you know. So, no, I want to end our day before we give our final thoughts. I want to end it with this very short production that deals with mental health and Black men and depression, okay?
Yo, what up, bro? Yeah, I'm alright, man. Yeah, that's my motherfucking brother, bro. That's crazy how that shit happened, bro. With a motherfucking gun, dog? Yeah, man. I'm just about to probably, man, take me a little walk, man, smoke something while I'm walking, just chill out, man. Alright, bro. Yeah. Shit, that's crazy. Smoke, man. Man, I ain't got no lighter. Crazy. Damn, somebody pick up the phone. Fuck, man, I can't get nobody else to the phone. Fuck, this motherfucker chasing me. Shit. Fuck, man. I would call you niggas all just, I can't get nobody to answer the phone, bro. Somebody keep chasing me. Fuck. Shit. get some on my chest.
Come on in.
It's deep, man. We don't recognize just how mental health is chasing us, and depression, how it's chasing us, and how critical it is for us to get some help.
Until we face it,
Yeah.
we gonna keep running.
You know,
It ain't hard.
I've been on this weight loss journey a couple times now, right? You know, so but oftentimes we fail to realize, we'll put the importance on the physical health. You know, hey, I'm gonna hit the gym, you know, I'm gonna lose this weight, I'm gonna do this, because we got the physical aspects. I mean, you know, we talked about health issues, you know. I'm now on medication and I didn't realize, decided I was gonna change my weight situation long before I found out. Now I'm sticking my finger and taking some pills to keep it from progressing. And so, you know what I mean? It's more motivation, but you know, it was so important to really get my headspace together and do that, the emotional and mental exercise to strengthen that, because I don't think I would have the discipline to focus on anything else if I didn't going through what we've said. And I mean, you know, that's kind of what I took away from that video. It's like, at first I was like, wait a minute, what's getting ready to happen? But you know, once I started realizing he was being chased, I mean, you know, sometimes it'll push you to, you'll get to that breaking point. Something will happen that will cause you. I think we have those aha moments that'll make you realize, okay, I gotta go talk to somebody. And just, it's so therapeutic just talking about where you've been and your experiences. And I think, you know, I kind of found a purpose in that, in sharing, hey, I've been through this and it didn't break me. I'm still here, and it resonates with people when I talk to them. And if God will do that for me, He definitely got you. So, you know, I think yeah, that's powerful there.
That's it. That's it. So, brothers, we've come to the end, man. I do want to, as always, let's do some takeaways. Brother Evans, man, share with us a takeaway, man. What'd you get from the discussion today, and talk to the people?
Well, the one thing that I would say that my takeaway is this is affirming that I'm not the only one dealing with something. Okay, so when you talk about, well, I've been married before, or I had a gambling problem, or I had a drinking problem, trust me, you ain't the only one. And so one, I would say, don't think isolated. And you say, well, they're not going to understand. Somebody will. The other thing that I would say is, please be aware of what you're putting into your mind. Okay. And one of the things that I'm going to say is, for instance, one of the worst things to me for our community is reality television. Okay. We, as a community, collectively look at stuff like that and think that's how we want to live. And you know, what is it, Married to a Millionaire or something like that? It's like, okay, let's be serious. How many of us are going to find, you know, that person? You know, where you are, love the skin that you are in. I think I need to say that again. Love the skin that you are in. You're okay. Nobody's perfect. And this too, as my man said, this too shall pass. So just and click, grab on to something positive. Go to the church, go to the mosque, go to the temple, and go to the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, and look for those positive affirmations that a brighter day is coming. That's me.
That's it. That's it, man. We appreciate you joining us today as a guest on,
Thank you all
and
for
you
having
just
me.
being a part, man. Most
Thank you
definitely.
so much.
Most
I'm glad I
definitely.
got to share.
See, Patrick, talk to us, man. Give us a takeaway. What you got going on?
Hey man, in my little I don't know if that was a soliloquy or what. Just I kind of gave a little bit of my takeaway on there, but I mean overall, I mean nothing is uh, nothing is our mental space is so important. because it's there's so much fragility there because we don't really focus that much on it. We use distractions to numb the pain, to try to get through, and we got to get to a point of stop trying to make it, and to a point of creating a better life, because this whatever we think is going to come out some way, kind of like your point, where you'll have good people in your life and you'll push them away simply because you don't know how. And that's what I was like, I can't use the error issues in my past and let them continue to affect my present, and my future. I've got to make a change, and that's the biggest takeaway, because once there's so much going on, we got to recognize how we feel. It's okay to feel, and sometimes the shortest distance between two roots is a straight line, and you just got to go through it. It hurts like crazy, but it's better on the other side when you go through it. Sometimes you like Usher said, you just gotta let it burn. You know I gotta use a music quote somewhere, so there it is, Usher.
That's it. That's it. Man, we appreciate that. We appreciate it. T Bird, talk to us.
My biggest takeaway, and first off, Brother Evans, thanks for joining us. Thanks for providing your wisdom as always. I think it's really being intentional with our mental health and paying attention to us and other people. When they're going through something, talk to them. If we're going through something, we need to talk to somebody. So it's changed the stigma of counseling is bad. If somebody's going to a counselor and they're like, man, I didn't learn anything, then try somebody else. But don't get stuck in the space where I don't want to go to mental health. And understanding that depression takes our joy. Whatever we love to do, we take it away. Some people sleep too much. For me, you guys know the gym is my refuge. But when I was going through my depression part, I didn't go to the gym. I didn't want to get out of bed. Like the guy said, he want to take a shower. I did not want to go to the gym. You're unmotivated. So it is, everybody goes through something. Be there for each other, give them words of wisdom, and go to a professional counselor.
There it is, man. There it is, and it's critical that we go to that. Thank you for those words of wisdom, T. Patrick. T. Bird. When we're looking at what we're dealing with today in today's time, right there, and as I stated in the very beginning of this podcast, we got people that's dealing with so many issues right now. There's so much going on in this world. You turning on the TV and you've been bombarded by social media and all this other stuff that's going on. And it's just like that, just like the video we showed at the very end, mental health has this way of sneaking in and chasing us until it gets us. That's depression, that's bipolar, that's emotional issues, all those things, right? But we weren't designed to live in this condition. We weren't designed to live in this space. We were designed to be whole. We were designed to live a peaceful, tranquil life. And that doesn't mean life's not gonna come with its own set of issues. But we have a God who loves us, a creator who loves us, and we have a word that can dwell on the inside of us. But sometimes we have to go a little bit further, and we gotta seek that help. We gotta go out there. We got to seek that support from our brothers, create these safe communities. We got to create these safe spaces where we can actually talk about what's going on and figure out, like Brother Evans said, that we're not in this thing by ourselves. So my word and my suggestion and my encouragement to my brothers and sisters that's listening to this podcast right now is that if you're going through something, if you know that you're not yourself, if you know that emotionally, if you know that mentally or physically things are going on inside of you, there is help for you. There is a space where you can find your wholeness and live your best life. And your best life is not about what you own. Truth of the matter is not even about the person that's in your life, but really it's about the peace of mind, the existence that you live in. The space that you create when you get into it, that's your best life. And so today we're just going to invite you and invite you to join No More Hiding. there are many different therapists that's out there that can help you, and if you need one, if you need a suggestion, reach out to us at nmhformen.org. That's nmhformen.org. You can DM us, or you can inbox us, and we'll help get you connected with someone in your area. Right. Also, I want you to remember that our podcast is every first and third Saturday of the month. We try to cover critical conversations. We have conversations that are not common in this space. You just got three brothers and our guest is joining us at the table, and we're talking, and we're just sharing our experiences, and we're being transparent, because that's what no more hiding is. Right. So, Lord, we thank you. We give you the praise for being here. We thank you for those who listened in and those who are yet to listen in. We ask that if they're dealing with mental health issues, emotional, mental, physical, whatever's going on in their life, that you would give them the strength and courage in order to find that safe space where they can get the help. We ask that you would continue, Lord, to bless emotionally, that you would bless financially, those who are supporting, those who listen in. We thank you for them. We ask that you would continue to help us grow. This we ask in your most precious name. Remember, until next time, as we always say, my manhood, my mission. Be blessed.